It's the kind of question that keeps you up at night. It's been the subject of countless Philosophy 101 essays, and it's impossible to prove one way or another. Nope, not Scientology. It's that old question you keep coming back to every time you start feeling a little existential, a little unsure of whether your actions really matter.
Do human beings have free will?
I guess I should rephrase our central question, because what I'm curious about is the Jewish take on whether or not humans have free will. The question is only interesting if you believe in an all-knowing, all-seeing, all-powerful force that created all of us. Belief in God? Kinda Judaism's whole deal. But of course, you know what they say, 2 Jews, 3 opinions. And that's true for every major Jewish question, from who makes the best bagels, to are human beings able to make their own choices, or are we all just puppets of a divine force that scripted every moment of our lives and left us with no real ability to choose for ourselves, which means that nothing is in our hands and everything is preordained, and oh my God, I need to breathe into a paper bag right now. Whew, okay, just had to get that mini existential crisis off my chest. But seriously, this isn't a frivolous question. It's got far-reaching implications for how we live our lives. Because if we don't have free will, what's the point of any of our actions? What's the point of trying to be better, you know?
Who am I? I don't know.
Okay, I'm feeling that existential crisis creeping in again. Let's turn to an ancient source of wisdom, the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, one of the pillars of our whole religious system. In the very first chapter, God creates human beings in God's image, and presumably God's got free will, right? So that must mean we do too. Case closed, existential crisis cleared up. Yeah, not so fast. Because let's be honest, we may be made in God's image and all, but humans aren't exactly like God. I mean, have you seen humanity lately? Have you read the Torah? Because it's basically story after story of humans doing really bad stuff to each other. Like, oh, I don't know, being so wicked that God destroys the entire world and most of humanity, or, let's see here. Yeah, selling their brother into slavery because they're jealous of his fancy coat. Humans ruining each other's lives since before recorded history.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
But underlying all this scheming and violence is choice. Because in story after story, the bad guys get punished somehow, forced to take accountability. And boy, oh boy, does God hold humanity accountable. What with all the destroying the world and nuking Sodom and Gomorrah and turning the Nile to blood. Yikes. Okay, it's not all terrible. The Torah does have some scenes where humanity gets it right. I'm talking Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebecca, Jacob, Rachel and Leah. And it's not just in the Torah. Our modern world is filled with amazing acts of kindness and love. I mean, we invented libraries. Libraries, places where you can just access all human knowledge for free. Here's the question though. Yeah, humans have the ability to do both good and bad things, but that doesn't necessarily mean we have free will. Because if God is omniscient, then doesn't he, she, they, whatever, know what choices humanity is gonna make? And if God already knows our choices, then aren't they predetermined? Doesn't that just mean we don't actually have free will? Ugh, my head is spinning again. Okay, we're gonna go back to 10th century Iraq, where one of Judaism's most important rabbis was formulating an answer to this very question. Meet Rav Saadia Gaon, whose title in modern Hebrew simply translates to genius. So I think we should take what he has to say pretty seriously. Rav Saadia tackled the paradox of free will in his book, The Book of Beliefs and Opinions, which is an excellent, straightforward title, like just telling you exactly what you're gonna get. Love that. Anyway, he had 4 observations about free will. Number 1, we definitely feel like we have free will. I mean, we're constantly making choices. What do I study? What job do I want? Swipe left or right? Now we can argue that this much choice isn't very good for our easily overwhelmed human brains.
Right now, I'm a little overwhelmed.
But we definitely can't deny that we're always making choices. And I'll tell you for free, it is exhausting having this much free will. Number 2, why would God take the time to compose an elaborate system of rules and rewards and punishments if we have no free will?
What's the point of it all?
Number 3, God tells us, I have put before you life and death, blessing and curse. Choose life if you and your children want to live.
You must choose. But choose wisely.
Seems kind of weird to say choose life if we have no free will. Number 4, and this observation is definitely my favorite, the schools of Hillel and Shammai, which were basically the Statler and Waldorf of the Talmudic period, are arguing, as per the usual, about whether humans should have been created in the first place. Can we just take a second to appreciate how very emo this whole argument is? It's giving strong, I didn't ask to be born mom vibes.
I said I wish I'd never been born.
But the best part is, Hillel and Shammai end up agreeing that it would have been better if humans were never created. Which, like, whoa. But regardless of whether or not we should have been created, they say, we're here now. And so long as we're hanging around, trashing up the joint, we should do our best to make the right calls. But we can't make any decisions, let alone the right ones, if we don't have free will. So God might know everything, but that doesn't mean our choices are predetermined. We don't know what we're gonna do. And we have the capacity, actually the responsibility, to learn and grow and change, which we can only do by making choices. Just a few hundred years after Rav Saadia Gaon, another big-named rabbi showed up to complicate everything.
Welcome to the party, pal!
You might know him as Maimonides, the 12th century Jewish scholar and maybe the biggest name in Judaism since Moses himself. And he's got some thoughts on the nature of omniscience. Man, just once I want someone to introduce me as Becky, who has some thoughts on the nature of omniscience. Maimonides said, humans put things in terms that we understand. We anthropomorphize, or we ascribe human attributes and motivations to non-humans. That's why we think of God as just, or merciful, or angry, or loving, or whatever, because those are human attributes. The only ones we really understand and can relate to. But the whole point of God is that he, she, it, they, whatever, is way bigger than our limited human comprehension. And the best way for me to conceptualize this is through the example of the mantis shrimp, which is probably sacrilegious, but I like to use my free will to make controversial choices. Okay, so it turns out that mantis shrimp, that's these wacky looking dudes, have the most complex eyes in the animal kingdom, like way more complex than ours. They can see colors and angles and depths that we can't even imagine. Well, that's what God's like. Not violent, territorial, and creepy looking. More like God is so beyond our perception that we don't even know what we don't know about him, her, it, whatever. Has anyone made up a pronoun for God? Like, is it just God? That's what I'm going with. Anyway, in the same way that we don't have names for the colors that mantis shrimp can see, we don't have concepts that are big enough to truly understand God. So we squeeze him into a little box. For us, being all-knowing means that you know everything, including the future, which means that everything is predetermined. For God, though, omniscience probably means something else entirely, something we don't have the words or concepts or understanding to explain. That's how Maimonides solves this whole free will thing. He basically says that we're using unhelpful concepts and rubrics to define what God does or doesn't know. But our whole concept of knowing is human, and God transcends stuff like that.
Wild.
Okay, so we've settled it, right? We've got Hillel and Shammai, we've got Rav Saadia Gaon, we've got the legendary Maimonides, freaking Maimonides on the side of, yeah, humans have free will. We've got the amazing analogy of the mantis shrimp, which, as far as I'm concerned, is the smartest thing I've ever said. So,
Case closed.
not so fast. Because if there's anything Jews love, it's a dissenting opinion. Today's nonconformist is Rav Hasdai Crescas, 14th century Spanish philosopher and leader of Aragon's Jewish community. And he had some hot takes on this issue.
Let's hear him then.
Rav Crescas says that humans have the illusion of free will. We think we're making choices, even when we're not. And that's not a bad thing. It's exactly how God wants us to feel. That's why God gave us all these commandments and consequences and rules and rewards and all that jazz. But in reality, we're not really making choices. Everything we do has been preordained. See, Rav Crescas is a determinist. He thinks that all of our choices aren't choices at all. They're inevitable. And it's not because God knows what we're gonna do. It's because of our life circumstances. Still, Rav Crescas observes that everything about our circumstances, our intelligence, our environment, our worldview, conditions us into making inevitable choices. We might think we're choosing between multiple options. In reality, our whole lives have been preparing us to make the choices that we do. We never had a chance to make a different choice. It's a spooky thought. I don't think I like it. So what about reward and punishment? If we're doomed to make specific choices, how can God reward or punish us? Well, Rav Crescas reframes the concept of reward and punishment. For him, they're just consequences. You stick your finger into a flame, you get a burn. That's a consequence, not a punishment. You keep Jewish law and you merit the consequences, whether in this life or the next. In fact, the only thing that isn't predetermined, says Crescas, is whether or not you fear and love God. That is up to you, which is kind of a wild thing to say because isn't how you feel about God a function of how you grew up, your life circumstances, your mom? Not according to Rav Crescas, which I find absolutely wild. For real, if I could invite anyone to dinner, it'd be this guy. Okay, we've talked a lot about the rabbis of the ancient and medieval worlds, so I decided to look at a more modern source, Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik, AKA the Rav. 500 years after Rav Crescas set down his thoughts about our free will, or lack thereof, Rav Soloveitchik answered him. He doesn't disagree exactly, but he sort of merges a couple of different schools of thought. He says that we've got two frameworks for thinking about free will. One is deterministic, like Rav Crescas. Under this model, you are, for better or worse, fated to make the choices that you make. You're an object in your own life proceeding down the path that was set out for you. The Rav calls this model fate. But he says there's an alternative, which he calls destiny. And under this model, human beings have agency. We make choices, we control what we do. And here's where it gets interesting. Some people, writes the Rav, never get out of the fate model. They do the predictable thing, the inevitable thing, the thing they've been primed to do. They're passive participants in their own lives. But others choose destiny. They make active choices. They're the primary actors in their own lives. Sometimes they make the wrong choices. Sometimes they really screw up. But they also have the power to choose the right things if they want to. I don't know how I feel about this fate versus destiny framework, to be honest. It kind of makes free will sound like magic or faith or love. It works if you work it, you know what I mean?
It works if you work it.
But there's something interesting about the fact that we can choose whether or not we want to believe. So where does this leave my existential crisis, you ask? Well, I'm still having it because I'm a person and it's the 21st century. And yeah, this is me gesturing vaguely at everything. But in terms of free will, I think I know where I stand. I choose to believe that I have the power to make my own choices, to be the agent, the subject, the mover, the shaker, the person calling the shots in my own life as much as I can. Because I don't want to go along with my predetermined fate. I want to make my own destiny.